All In Sports Network. We love sports.
Buckle up, everybody. It is about to get a little messy, I fear. Welcome into All In Aggies. I'm your host, Ben Peck, as always. We're back after an eventful weekend. A lot going on in a lot of different sports. We'll touch on a few of them, but we'll start with the college football playoff rankings just released. Not much to say about the new rankings. Those haven't changed that much, but what was interesting was this dynamic that continues to play out of the idea of an SEC, not even SEC, but a conference championship loser being penalized for such a loss, and potentially a team sitting out that was not good enough to make it to the conference championship game being rewarded in their favor. There's also, of course, a big game coming up this weekend in Columbus, Ohio, in the Big Ten with Indiana and Ohio State. The question that is on everyone's mind, is Indiana in regardless? So they'll definitely be in with a win. If they lose, are they out? And are they out in favor of an SEC team coming in, potentially limiting some of the extra damage we talked about in that regard? Make no mistake about it. This is how I look at it. And we've talked about it a little bit on this channel, so I don't want to hash through the whole thing. I really want to get to Ward Manuel, what he had to say. But when you look at the rankings, I've got them pulled up now. You can't see them off screen. You have 4 Big Ten teams in contention. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 SEC teams in contention. Not necessarily all those teams are going to make it, but you have a mismatch in the balance of power to where I believe they are going to do whatever they can, as much as they have to keep the SEC happy. They're going to do whatever they can to make sure they limit the damage for both, because as disastrous as it would be to have the SEC pull out, I think more disastrous, because I think the SEC has always been not just a bigger entity in college football, but in all, just as a totality athletic conference. When you look at the sports that most people play, they're right there with every one of them. I mean, baseball, softball, like every team makes the tournament. So, but I think they're going to be trying to make sure that those Big Ten teams are happy. And they could tell the SEC, look, you already got 5 teams that made it. What do you want us to do? The 2 teams in limbo, the 3 teams in limbo, I think are going to be Texas, Tennessee, and Texas A&M. Make no mistake about it, though, the way that Indiana game plays out is going to go a long way in determining Texas A&M's fate. I think you're going to see an audition from Indiana at the Horseshoe in Columbus. Not just how they play, not just if they win, but how they look in that game is going to go a long way to determining if they can get in over an SEC team. Let me restate it this way. I want to cut this for later. Indiana is about to have their audition for the college football playoff against Ohio State in Columbus. That audition is going to be pitted up against Texas A&M's audition in the SEC championship game. Remember, A&M has to make it to Atlanta regardless. That's a non-negotiable. But if A&M gets routed in Atlanta or loses solidly to Alabama or Georgia, while Indiana goes down to the wire with Ohio State, I think the Hoosiers come out on top in the eyes of the selection committee in terms of those 2 games head-to-head. Because here's the deal. Indiana has a lot more to gain from beating Ohio State than Texas A&M does Texas. If Indiana wins, I think Ohio State's okay, because Ohio State could say, hey, we lost to 2 of the top 3, 2 of the top 2 teams in the country in your rankings. We lost to number 1, number 2, number 1, number 3, whatever it is. If A&M wins, I think that will go a longer way towards discrediting Texas than it will crediting A&M. Because then Texas is still your best win, but I think people will start to raise questions. Now, do they really drop Texas from 3 all the way out? I don't know. That's where Tennessee comes into play, because Tennessee is that lowest ranked team of the 2-loss SEC teams at number 11. So I think if they do decide to keep Texas in, it is going to, and A&M, it is going to be at the expense of Tennessee. Now, they can make it a lot easier. If Ohio State wins, they drop out Indiana. Then you only have to make room for, you only have to drop out one SEC team to compromise. But right now, if all 4 Big Ten teams make it, you're going to need to make room for 2 SEC teams to drop out. Okay, and I'm including Texas A&M, by the way. I know they're not in the field as of now, but obviously if they beat Texas, they would be. So we're all of this is contingent for a win against Texas. But this was Ward Emanuel and his comments specifically when asked by Reese Davis about the idea of a conference championship game loser being essentially eliminated on that basis.
Teams ranked 7 through 11 include a lot of 2-loss SEC teams, all of whom are still in the mix, even though Tennessee's path to get to the SEC championship game is pretty narrow. But all of these teams could wind up in the conference championship game and risk a 3rd loss. Lane Kiffin of Ole Miss has said that there are some coaches he's talked to that would prefer not to play that game. So I'm not trying to have you guess a hypothetical of who might win or lose a conference championship game, but what will be the philosophy of this committee with a team that might get into a conference championship game yet suffer a 3rd loss, which would give them more losses than other teams are being compared against, as opposed to teams who get to sit home and wait?
Well, we have a lot of value. We're not going to speculate on what will happen, but we have a lot of value of with the teams that make a championship game. That says a lot. Playing 12 games in the season, making your championship game is a really valuable data point, number one. Number two, we're going to evaluate the games and how teams play and the performance on the field. That's what the commissioners have asked us to do. They didn't ask us to stop right before the championship game. They asked us to rank the teams through the championship game. And I think you could see over the years how the committee has valued those championship games and who stays in and where they're ranked. But this year, we're not going to speculate. We're going to let the season play out. But I think teams who make that championship game, the committee looks at them and puts them in high esteem.
Puts them in high esteem, but it's a data point. It's just an asterisk on your thing, and we were asked to continue to evaluating teams throughout all 13 weeks of the season. You know what this reminds me of is Ohio State in 2014. They won the national championship that year, mind you, but they had the Big Ten championship that game that year, and I believe that was with Cardell Jones that year where they had all sorts of stuff going back and forth. By the way, and that's a big reason why I think it was stupid for Florida State to get left out last year, because I get the idea if their resume wasn't good enough, but I think you have to go based off the body of work, which still puts the better teams in over lesser teams with comparable bodies of work. But if you run the table, I think you've got to be in that situation, a major conference team like Florida State. But anyway, 2014, Ohio State down 2 quarterbacks, and they beat Wisconsin 59-0, if you remember that Big Ten championship game. And then Ohio State makes it in as the number 4 team, and on they go to win the national championship. If you remember back then, there was a huge contingent watching that Big Ten championship game saying there's no way they're leaving out Ohio State, because there was some debate. There were avenues for them to be on the outside. But at the end of the day, they're using the eye test as well. So, again, I don't want to harp on the specific rankings too much. We've done that a ton. We've played out the scenario about how I'm worried about A&M needing to go SEC championship or bust. But I'm just going to add this wrinkle in for this week. Keep an eye on how close Indiana plays Ohio State. If Indiana looks good and plays competitively, that will be their flat. Ironically, that could be their best game, their best resume builder. Say, hey, we almost beat what y'all have as the number 2 team in the country. So that is what we're staking our flag to. Forget the Michigan win. We're saying that's our best game, and you should respect us. And if they win, obviously immeasurably better. But if they get dominated and A&M can beat Texas either convincingly or comfortably, and then they put up a good fight in the SEC championship game, I think they're in, win or lose. At least in over Indiana. But if Indiana plays a close game and A&M squeaks one out against Texas, then you get to Atlanta and you get rocked by what would now be Alabama, and the most likely scenario could be Georgia. I think there's caution flags there. So again, my big takeaway from this week, look at Indiana, how they look in that game, and then as A&M will have to match that cumulatively with their performances against Texas and whoever they would face in the SEC championship game. This is all in Aggies. If you're watching on YouTube, appreciate you. Go ahead and hit that like button down there, and also subscribe while you're at it. Help us grow the channel. We've got a lot going on. I haven't been on here as much as I would like to, but because we've got crossover season, we've got multiple sports. I'm running around. I'm doing high school stuff. But anyways, we've got some good stuff coming up this week, including tennis national championships for singles and doubles. We're going to be up in Waco. I'm going to be going back and forth trying to get some matches there, and we'll be talking about that in just a bit. But subscribe, let people know about the channel. We'll come back on here tomorrow and talk some more stuff relating specifically to A&M's path to the playoff. Actually, hold that thought. We're going to talk one more topic on A&M football. So let's think about this. A&M goes into Texas. They beat Auburn, but they lose to the Longhorns. They miss out on not only the SEC championship game, but the college football playoff as well. They're 9-3. Disappointing end to the season for sure. But let's step back, take a 30,000-foot view, look at this thing. I think what Texas A&M has done, and they probably can seal it with a win at Auburn. They have had that needle mover of a season that I have been talking about since the beginning of the year. They have been in the college football playoff conversation all the way through November, and in the SEC championship conversation. Not even conversation, like controlling their own destiny. Not 2020 needing help, but in the driver's seat the whole year. I think that will immeasurably boost this program moving forward. Now, sure, if you actually get to Atlanta, actually win that game, actually do stuff in the playoff, it will amplify even more. But I think this is sort of the 2022 Tennessee season, what could have been the 2023 Mizzou season. Actually, I'll say it is the 2023 Mizzou season in the sense of it was hey, people are looking at us now and taking us seriously. Now, the difference with A&M and Mizzou is not only that Mizzou has sort of not lived up to it this year, although it hasn't been a disaster. I'll give them that. They're ranked now, I believe. But Mizzou is just it's tougher for them to build on a consistent basis as it is for A&M. That's the difference. A&M, like Tennessee, if you can get that thing going, then all of a sudden you're on the mountaintop, and someone, if they want to take your place, they got to come knock you down. Mizzou, kind of fighting an uphill battle. But same vibe in the sense that 2022 Tennessee used that year as a launching off point with the win over Alabama and the respect for Josh Heupel and what he's building over there, not just internally in terms of the guys that they had there. They had Nico lined up, ready to go, right? Like that was the moment where if you weren't paying attention to Tennessee, you should. And I think you should continue to. They still have flaws. No team's perfect. But that was kind of a jumping off point. 2023 Mizzou, at least coming into this year, and I think if they played better this year, they would be much more in the conversation than they are now. And it definitely was, if you remember the offseason, a lot of buzz around Mizzou as a little SEC dark horse. I think if you give A&M, a program like A&M, that kind of juice to work with, especially with a whole summer to go through recruiting, that could be very problematic for other teams in the SEC. This was Mike Elko talking sort of about that concept of, hey, regardless of how the ultimate result shakes out this year, where do you track the trajectory of the program?
From the CEO perspective, I think it's important that we don't lose sight of like where we've come from, what we've accomplished, the fact that this is the first time in our SEC history that we're in this position down the stretch, controlling our own destiny to Atlanta. So from that perspective, I think there has to be some understanding of the direction we're going and that it's a good direction for year one and where we're at.
Shout out Theo Nordstrom there at the career high, by the way, 111 against New Mexico State. Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, this is especially for a first-year coach. I mean, think about this. Those other 2 seasons I mentioned, Tennessee and Mizzou, those weren't even first-year coaches. If you could have this kind of year with a first-year coach, 9-3, again, we're talking about the hypothetical of A&M beating Auburn, losing to Texas. Not to say that's the ceiling, but if you can make sure that's the floor, buckle up. I mean, we're already seeing it. 2025 recruiting, or 2026 recruiting, rather, has been going crazy. In 2025, they lost Husan Longstreet to USC, but that's a perfect example right there. If they were disappointing, you probably see what you can do this season. Maybe you might have to basically punt on a quarterback this year. Transfer portal could be, I mean, even if, let's say Connor Wigman had struggled and Marcel Reed has not looked good in this hypothetical, and A&M's 7-5 because they both have looked a little wobbly, and you need a quarterback and you lost your 5-star. You go looking for a quarterback, do what you can. And as far as transfers go, like, I don't know that you could get a high-level guy. Now, you might not get a good transfer because people see Marcel Reed and say he's got how many years of eligibility left? 3? No, thank you. So that might be preventing you from getting looks in the transfer portal. But you want to talk about for 2026 and for 2025, how you can come up. Got the cleaning crew behind me. Apologize for that. But if you want to talk about that difference, that's huge. So, they're at least still going to have a chance to pull in maybe a big fish because, again, of the success they've had. Again, if you're watching, like the video, comment, let us know what you think so far, and subscribe if you haven't already. Tell a friend, help us grow this channel. We want to make it as good as we can. I'll be out on the ground, plenty of content leading up to the Texas game, and I'm going to have later, by tomorrow, I will have a reliving of the bonfire memorial ceremony that was held Monday morning, 2:42 a.m. I will kind of compile some of the stuff from that and have that available to watch. So those are the kind of things, again, they take time out of my day, but I want to do it to be able to create the best content on here as possible. I'm definitely a quality over quantity guy. So I know, just know if I'm away for some reasons, I'm building stuff that hopefully will have higher leverage that you'll appreciate moving forward. So your subscriptions help in that effort as well. All right. Got a text here. All right. We'll take a look at 2 other things before we head off. And again, another principle of this show, no matter if there are hundreds of thousands, 6 figures, 5 figures, 4 figures, 3 figures worth of fans in the stands for any sport for Texas A&M, I want you to know about what these teams are doing, and in particular, national championship, conference championship contenders. We, on that note, are going to shift over to the country club portion of the show. Let's talk about some big news for A&M women's golf this week. Adela Cernousek, the individual national champion in 2024, has decided to forego her remaining college eligibility and pursue professional ambitions. She will be playing to earn a spot on the LPGA Tour later this year. She won the Q School qualifying event, the first stage. I don't want to listen. I'm going to butcher all the golf ins and outs, but my understanding is, she won the stage to qualify to this final qualifying stage, and if she makes the cut there, she can earn her spot on the LPGA Tour and compete as early as next spring. So we wish her all the best in that. And as for A&M, kind of a tricky situation. We're going to hear from Gary Chadwell right now, head coach. He's going to talk about the impact she's left, and we'll talk about that as well, but also where this team goes from here.
I know what this means for her, but I also know what it means for the team. But that's an opportunity for us in some ways. And, we have a team meeting this afternoon that we get to talk about that. But, when that young lady walked on campus 3.5 years ago, nobody was really talking about that. And, she feels like she's ready to go, and we're 100% behind her. The hard part about it is just the timing of how our sport provides that opportunity. Most of the sports, it happens after the season, and they have a combine or something to go get ready for before a draft. But just with our sport, it's the best chance for her to what she feels like she can chase a career. All of us in this room could turn professional tomorrow. It's really a decision that you make, but we want her to have a career. What she feels like is in front of her gives her that best chance. And, I'm excited for the challenge that's going to bring for her, because it'll bring out another gear in her. I think that's what's been so impressive with her, is that she has the maturity to assess things and learn, and her game is there. Now she's ready to go learn in that environment.
All right. So again, much congratulations to Adela. She has been, they tweeted out, and I don't think you can argue with it, the best player in program history. A pretty exclusive list and pretty impressive list when you look at the list of NCAA individual champions, by the way. As a team, just the past 3 years with Coach Chadwell and the ladies, I don't think people appreciate this as much. And again, I think if you haven't followed them, I would say, women's tennis won national championship last year, and we'll touch on them in just a bit. Baseball, obviously, one game away twice in Omaha. But after those two, women's golf has been the closest team to winning a national championship over the last 3 years, over my 3 years in College Station. Okay, semifinals, quarterfinals, and the 1 year you go to the quarterfinals, you have an individual champion. Now, the first 2 years, I want to talk about the core of that team. Haley Cooper, Zoe Slaughter, Blanca Fernandez Garcia Pogio, Jenny Park, and Adela. They went 2 years back-to-back with those teams. SEC championship, top 4, semifinals, and match play. And then you lose Haley Cooper from that team last year, but 4 of those 5 helping you get a quarterfinal appearance, and Adela winning an individual national championship for you. Now you've lost not just Adela for this year, but from that core 5 we talked about, you've lost Blanca, you've lost Haley, you've lost Jenny, and now you've lost Adela. I guess I'm trying to think, is that the whole? Yeah, you've lost all 5 of those that you had 2 years ago. Adela was going to be the last one you had still left. Zoe Slaughter. You've lost Zoe Slaughter, who was part of that core for the first 2 years, or for the last 3 years, excuse me. So it's going to be a time of transition. Caetana Fernandez Garcia Pogio, who again came in as the number 2 world amateur player in the world, she won her first individual title not that long ago in the last tournament of the fall. If she can turn the corner, you've seen Vanessa Barovalos from Canada has looked pretty good at times, Canadian freshman, and then you've got a pretty good group behind them. And we were talking about how we wanted to see who was going to emerge from that to make this a competitive team with Adela. Now you don't have Adela, so someone's got to step up. But also, because of the success they all had the last 3 years, they were able to sign the number 2 recruiting class in the country. I think we talked about that the other day, so I won't go over it again, including, though, the number 1 player in the country. So Adela contributed a lot to the program, and because of the success not only she had, but the ones before her, they were able to reload with this super class. And you've still got 2 more years of Caetana Fernandez Garcia Pogio, should she stay around, and Vanessa, and all the other ladies. Vanessa's got 3 years. But anyway, you've got a lot of talent to work with for the next 4 or 5 years. And a lot of that is built on the legacy of those ladies. So congratulations to Adela. Wish her all the best. I will say A&M is kind of screwed in the situation of, as Coach alluded to, the way that golf has their system set up in terms of waiving eligibility. I wish they would let these ladies, these fellas, basically go through the qualifying, retain their amateur status, and almost like the baseball draft. If you don't make it, you can come back and it's okay. Like you haven't played in a professional tournament yet. I know that they've qualified through a portion, but I don't know. I think that part of the system's broken, and it's not Adele's fault. It's not A&M's fault, but it is what it is. Finally, again, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, like the video. Appreciate you being here. Let's talk some women's tennis. National champion Mary Stoiana is the number 1 overall player in the women's singles championships this week in Waco. Nicole Kieran, the young lady who clinched the team national championship in the spring, she is also in the field of 64. Daria Smetanikoff lost her first round match, but she made it. So you had 3 players in singles. Mary Stoiana and Nicole each won their first match in the round of 64. I believe they're on both separate sides of the draw as well. So they, I guess, potentially could have an all Texas A&M championship match on Sunday. So that would be fun. But I want to hear from Mary Stoiana because she's a senior. This is her last year going for it. And she has accomplished about as much as you can in college tennis with the team national championships, the SEC national championships, ITA championships, the All-American championships, just sort of a mini NCAA singles championship. The one thing she's missing, the one major trophy, is that NCAA singles championship and doubles. But singles is what she's going for this week. But she is the number 1 overall seed. She's been ranked number 1 in the country for quite a while at various times. This was her thoughts just of before we started the tournament. We caught up with her. This was her thoughts leading into the tournament as the number 1 overall seed.
Yeah, for sure. It's a huge honor going in as the 1 seed. I'm super excited to just kind of play with those types of pressures and see how I can manage from match to match. But overall, I'm really excited, and I'm taking it as a good challenge to just see how far I can go.
All right, we'll see. Fingers crossed for Mary. I think she's got a good shot. She's, I said it. I don't want to harp on it too much because I feel like I say it every time I talk about her, if I haven't already on here. What she did from the moment after her freshman year to the beginning of her sophomore year is nothing short of one of the most impressive things I have seen for just about any athlete in any sport of college athletics around. Like she was a very good freshman, but to come in and basically go from a top 70, 60, 50 player in the country as a freshman. But mind you, there's a lot of players returning above her and then immediately become like a top 5 player in the country for 3 years straight. I mean, stuff of legends, man. You've got her, Carson Brandstein, recent graduate national champion on the pro circuit. Nicole Kieran making some noise, as we mentioned. I think Mia Kupris has some potential. Jennifer Jackson, freshman coming in next year. Lexington Reed, a pretty good freshman this year. I think you're going to start seeing some Aggies on the pro circuit, which will be really fun and exciting because, again, I'll just be honest. I know that maybe you're not a diehard like A&M team. Tennis is not on your radar, but even if you're a casual tennis fan, it will be very cool to look up at Wimbledon and see. Hopefully, I dream of a day where you look up and you see 2 of the top 16 players in the field are Aggies. That's pretty cool. Just like it was watching Sam Bennett at the Masters or Adela Cernousek at the U.S. Open. So, I don't know. Best of luck to Mary and Nicole. Congratulations to Daria for making it to the NCAA championships. She had to work her way, win an eliminator match, so that was impressive stuff there. We're going to hopefully, one of those things I was telling you about, going to try to get it to Waco for a few matches, definitely the championship if she makes it. But our aim is to get up to there and have some match highlights for you and some post-match reaction because, again, we want you to know about these teams, these athletes, these coaches, whether hundreds of thousands of people are in the stands or whether you have 3 digits of people or 2. Like, I don't care how many people show up. We're going to be there, and we're going to be your source to let you know. That's all the time we have for you tonight. All in Aggies. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, subscribe. We'll be back later this week, and we'll see you later. And we'll talk about that Auburn game, specific breakdown on that matchup.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.